Okay, so we're 4 minutes in. I think we can go ahead and start. So if you've just joined us, hello. There are two screens that we're going to be sharing here. This one with the slides and me in the bottom corner next to this lady, and then Phil's screen where he's going to be doing some practical stuff. So welcome. This is MetaCell's AI-powered life science data analysis workshop. We have an exciting hour and 30 minutes for you today to give you kind of the best of things that we've learned over the recent months on how to take advantage of the latest and greatest tools in AI that we've found. Now, we don't claim that we know everything for sure. So I'm sure there's lots of intelligence in this room, in this Zoom room, to add to things. So if you guys, want to use the chat, feel free to reach out and, either ask a question at any point or offer a comment. We'll do our best to get back to them as we're going. So let me kind of get running here. All right. So we're going to start off with a poll. I'm going to kick this off right now. And we're going to launch this. So just to warm everybody up here, 85 of you. So what's your biggest data analysis pain point right now? Is it writing and debugging code? Is it creating figures and visualizations? Is it documenting what you did for papers? Or do you spend more time coding than doing science? Which of these things applies to you? Everybody is voting very handily. It's so crazy to watch all this happen so simultaneously. 54 of you have voted. It's racking up. It's racking up. All right. We're going. A few more seconds. 66 of you answering the poll. If you just got in, please vote on the poll. 72 of you have voted. All right. All right. Going once, going twice. Five, four, three, two, one. All right. Somebody got in right at the end there. All right. So sharing those results. Hope you can all see. So it's pretty close actually amongst these different answers. But so top one is writing and debugging code. You're gonna like this presentation if that's your biggest data analysis pain point. You're gonna like it quite a lot, I think. Second is documenting what you did for papers. We're gonna cover that as well. Third is I spend more time coding than doing science. I think you'll also like this. And then lastly, in a close second, just one vote less, creating figures and visualization. So we're going to cover all that stuff today. Thank you guys for participating in that. We're going to cover all that stuff today. None of the above. Yeah. Well, hey, if you have a none of the above and you'd like to offer your own data analysis pain point in the chat, feel free to do that. Happy to take that on as well. But these are the things that we have, come up to talk to today. So by the end of the session, you will have seen AI. You will have seen AI write working analysis code in real time, as near real time as we can do. You will have seen the automatic generation of unit tests. You will have seen publication-ready plots created from natural language. You'll have seen a short method section written from code, and you will see process diagrams generated automatically. So stick around to get to all these things in our presentation today. So yeah, we wanted to get the ball rolling with that poll, kind of break the ice a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we've seen all these things. We've now at MetaCell, both in our software engineering practice and in offering data science as a service to labs and companies around the world. We've seen these data points a lot. So organizing messy data into usable formats, creating graphs just to understand what you've got. Debugging scripts that maybe it worked once, but doesn't seem to be doing today. Why is that? Don't know. Or documenting methods for papers, and then just spending too much time on the code itself. So these things are difficult. So we're going to start off here talking a little bit about ChatGPT versus agentic. And when we sent out the original invite for this, we sort of said, We're going to talk about both ChatGPT and we're going to talk about Claude Code. And in the building of this presentation, I actually thought that it will be much, much more useful for everybody here to be introduced to the agentic mode of doing this than it will be on ChatGPT. And there's some reasons for that. Most people are familiar with ChatGPT at this point somehow, right? And most people are probably familiar with plugging in some kind of a data science problem into ChatGPT. If that's not you, welcome to 2026. It's a good time to start playing with ChatGPT. But I'm actually going to show you, and together with Phil, what things are starting to look like in a mode where we're moving into an agentic mode of doing AI data science. So in the ChatGPT, and particularly here, I'm talking about web because it's true that ChatGPT also has some agentic features, which I won't talk about here. But if we're talking about a web-based prompt where you go either on your phone or on your laptop in a browser and you're having an interactive conversation with, say, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or yeah, any other system that you might be working with, Copilot of some kind, which has many of those models. You're basically doing things like copying, pasting into a box. And you're either describing the code or you're copying the output, pasting into a file. You know that context is sort of limited to where the to after a certain number of chats, if you put in too much text, you kind of know that context is overflowing. It doesn't run code really. Behind the scenes, ChatGPT does actually kind of run a little bit of code, but not really the code that you're working on, not in the way that you want it to, and you're the one driving it. Well, in the new agentic world that we're getting into, and we're going to be showing you specifically on Claude Code, but Claude Code will not be the last agent that's there. So we're going to talk about this in terms of principles. So in this model, the agent is reading through your code, all of it, not just whatever you wanted to paste in a prompt, but like a whole code base. The agent can write directly to files in your code base or wherever else you'd like them to be. The agent manages its own context in that it's choosing what to read and what not to read and when to do a particular task. The agent can run the code. It can see the errors from running the code and it can fix those errors. And you kind of get into this mode where instead of you being the one executing everything, you're directing the agent to do the execution. And that's why, for all the things that we have talked about previously that take up a lot of time, this is a big time saver because it is doing the things and you are telling it what to do and guiding it along the way. By the way, I should pause here for a moment and do a little bit of introduction. So I didn't really introduce myself. My name is Stephen Larson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of MetaCell. We've been running MetaCell for 14 years now, going on 15 years. I personally started off life as a computer scientist, software engineer, moved on to being a neuroscientist in the life sciences, and then broadened that base in doing MetaCell to helping scientists and industry researchers get the most out of their code, get the most out of the software systems that they work in. We really found that there was a lack of knowledge and understanding in life science software. And so this topic today is very near and dear to my heart. Back in my computer science days, I actually studied old school AI. Never imagined that we'd be here at this point, but did actually do a master's thesis in AI back in the day. So it's a lot of fun to be putting together life sciences and the kind of advanced agentic AI together that we have here today. Let me pause and let Phil also introduce himself, who's been patiently waiting on the other side there. So hello, Phil.
Hello, thanks, Stephen. Hey everyone, I'm Phil. I did my PhD in calcium imaging, which will be, a good portion of what we talk about today, and then transition into data scientist for MetaCell. I've been focusing on, as Stephen mentioned, providing data science as a service to the neuroscience labs, and hopefully we're going to explore maybe the next phase of it today, which is, AI-assisted data science.
Thank you, Phil. And we will be using a neuroscience example throughout this course, but don't worry, it's applicable to all life sciences. Yeah. So getting back into the program after we did those introductions, this is kind of one of the main ideas that I want to put in your pocket to take away with today is that where we are getting to in a world of agentic AI in the data science is that the job is becoming about telling agents what code to write, not writing it yourself. You still need the domain expertise, but the agent is bringing the actual coding labor. And we're going to get into both what AI can do, but also what we still need humans to do and what human expertise is still very essential and crucial to doing here. So let's get going. So this may apply to you, or it may not. But the people that are going to benefit the most from this new mode of working in the data sciences is researchers who don't want to become experts in software engineering. Honestly, this has been a big pain point, and our company has helped a lot of people through it, to be honest. That said, for folks who know what analysis that they need, who understand the domain, who don't want to deal with like 15 versions of an open source library that don't necessarily work, right? Your time is better spent on science. And so methods like what we're going to be talking about here today are really going to accelerate you and get you faster to solving the challenges of your actual science. All right, so let's actually get in here and get practical. We're 15 minutes into this chat. Let's see what we can see. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at Claude Code in the system called VS Code. Claude Code is available from Anthropic. It's not the same as Claude. It is a thing that you install separately. And as a result, it operates in this more agentic mode that we're going to see at. We're going to do that. We're going to point it at the code base for a neuroscience data pipeline. And we're going to start off with a natural language query. If you were just joining us, you should see two tabs in Zoom. You should see this screen, which is me, and then you see another tab which says Phil Dong screen. And this would be a good moment to click over to Phil Dong screen and see what's over there. I'm clicking over to it as well on my view. And so you're going to see VS Code, and you're going to see on the left some code. And that is from the Minion pipeline. This is something that Phil built in his PhD, and it does calcium imaging analysis. We'll talk a little bit about what calcium imaging analysis is a little bit later, but we just kind of want to kick this off. He basically wrote this code base. It's there on GitHub. It's open source. If you happen to be doing stuff with miniscopes, we like it. We think it's a good thing to use. You could use it as well. But if that means nothing to you, no worries. The thing on the right is a terminal with Claude Code there, and it's welcoming Phil back. Some things that you can observe here, it's using a model called Opus 4.5. It's pointed at, it's installed on Phil's machine, and therefore it has access to Phil's files. And he's currently in the directory where Minion lives. So Phil, why don't you go ahead and type in just this first prompt here to just basically read my code and tell me what it does. That's what we're gonna do here. So if you want to follow along as well, feel free. This isn't necessarily a hands-on. We're gonna like get you through all the hurdles. But if you want to as well, you could also install VS Code and install the Claude Code extension. You also could just install Claude Code directly to your terminal. You can Google it and find the link to do that. What we are doing does require a subscription to Claude Pro. Again, this is not a Claude advertisement. I don't get any money from Anthropic for doing this. But in general, we want you to see the way that agents are working here. So if you want to, do that subscription, you can follow along. If not, this information may be useful to you for using an alternative agentic approach. As I said, ChatGPT does have one. I haven't tried it as much. But the point is to point it at your code base. So we're starting with this prompt. Please read through the code base and summarize what this code base is doing. As you can see, what's happening right now is instead of just bang, giving you back an answer, or maybe it takes a while with ChatGPT, it's doing something called explore. And so it's actually doing this thing that I said, which is that it's reading through the code rather sequentially. And so it may sometimes launch 2 or 3 agents to read code for you in parallel. But right now it's doing all those things. You can see it says plus 52 more tool uses, which are behind the scenes there. And it is sort of running through the entire code base right now. This is when I say agentic, this is the first thing to start to understand that all you said was read through the code base, and it translates that into using tools that are built into the Claude Code agentic layer that interacts with the large language model that we're all familiar with if we're using ChatGPT. Okay, question. We will have slides available later. Yes. Yep. So we'll have this to reference later. And then we got a question as well. Does it work in other terminals like PyCharm, or is VS Code needed as well? No, it is not. It does not VS Code specific. It works in lots of other source control IDEs. It also works just on a regular terminal, like on your MacBook. And in fact, on the terminal is the way that I use it most often. Okay, so it looks like it completed. It worked for about 1 minute and 33 seconds. That's the thing to understand, is that agents sometimes are actually going to run for minutes at a time. Sometimes 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on what you ask it to do. I've seen it run even up to 10 minutes or something when it was actually doing everything correctly when we get into coding. So, but importantly, you can kind of follow along to sort of see what it did and how it worked. So here's this code base summary. Now, of course, there was the README at the beginning of this repo. So you might say, hey, maybe it just read the README, and it just went from there. But given all the different source files that it touched, and from experience, things like this can also work even if we have a very minimal README, even if we have almost no README at all. It actually does look through the code, and it figures out fairly well what it is that a code base is doing. So you can see here, the title line. It's a comprehensive analysis pipeline for producing miniscope calcium imaging analysis, a technology used for recording neural activity in freely behaving animals. It's inspired by Cayman and mini pipe packages. It has some bullets there for the core purpose. Then it's documenting each of the main modules. And if you scroll down, yep. And so it says a little bit about the pipeline there. It's video input, then pre-processing, motion correction, cell initialization, CNMF fitting, unit merging, refinement, output. So the thing to understand here, less of like, this is not a tutorial about doing calcium imaging analysis. We do those separately if you're interested. But more importantly, that this is a data processing pipeline, like the ones that many scientists need. Many scientists that we've worked with need pipelines of some kind. Maybe it's not video that comes in. Maybe it's, RNA-seq data, right, to have something very different. But it has to go through a series of steps. Those steps have to be correct, and you have to get some output that's meaningful on the back end. It talks about key technologies, and then it talks about design highlights. And that is like the very highest level version of what this does. Now, okay, someone says they can only see the slides. They can't see anything else. If you can only see the slides, please in Zoom, try to see if you can see a second tab. For us, it's showing up on the top screen here, and see if you can click over into the tab that says Phil Dong's screen. Yeah, I think most people here have been able to see it so far, but if you've just joined us, please, you'll have to switch to that specifically manually. We haven't been able to put it up ourselves. Okay, so going back to this. So if all you take away from this session is that if you have some mysterious bit of code written by an employee who left your company, a undergraduate who was helping you do something and then went away, a graduate student who has left your lab, if all you take away is that you can use agentic AI to live on your machine, look at that code base after you've downloaded it, and you can ask questions interactively of it, then I think we'll have done a nice thing here, because that is a problem that I hear all the time, especially from investigators in academia, but I also hear it from managers who have teams that change a lot. You can have agentic AI grapple with your code base and tell you what it does, as much as it can figure it out from the source files, and it does a pretty good job. It also means that documenting a code base becomes very easy. Documenting is not a thing a lot of people find very fun. People generally find building stuff more fun than writing it up. Some of you out there might be super organized and you love documenting more than you love writing code. But for the rest of us, documenting, not so much fun. But this approach will let you document effortlessly and update documentation effortlessly as well. As you can see, it took about a minute and a half. So, all right, now I'm going to go real quick back to slide land. I'm going to advance the slide. And so that's the concept that I've been talking about. If you want to click back over to my screen real quick. So the key concept is it's not just an LLM. The LLM, you think of it as the thing you ask a question to, and it gives you an answer back quickly. There's obviously deep thinking mode where, it goes off and does research on the web and whatever. But this is on your computer, right? And so it can read the files on your computer. By the way, you give it the permission to do that, and you give it permission for a specific directory. But it does read the files on your computer. It runs commands on your computer. It can make decisions about what to do next and make suggestions, and it manages its own context. And manage its own context is what you saw it do there as it was reading through all the files on Phil's computer. So you don't have to be copying, pasting code, figuring out which is the bit of code that you want the AI to work on and then go over here and do the thing. No, you just give it the whole code base. Okay, key point. All right, so then now we're going to go one step further here. Okay, so we're going to go on to a second demo. Actually, let me just look at the chat. Okay, there is a question. Let me bring that question forward here. Okay, can it read rubbish, inefficient code like mine? Genuine question, as I wondered whether it needs a certain language format or structure. I will not name names on who asked that question. But yes, it reads all code. It doesn't need very nice code. It doesn't even need working code, frankly. As we'll show you later. It's happy to read all code. And another question that you could ask of a code base is read this code and look for any bugs that you notice in this code. You can also ask it to, as we'll see in a minute, run the code and fix any runtime errors that it finds. If you run code and it crashes and it's like error, blah, 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 didn't find package, or error, blah, 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 like, I don't know, null pointer error or whatever, right? Like it will, in this agentic mode, because it has access to write the code, it can go in and suggest to you what to fix and even apply the edit itself. Okay, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, this would probably be a moment before we do this. Actually, behind the scenes, Phil, can you go ahead and run this prompt? So if you click over to Phil's screen. So we're gonna go on to the next thing, and then I'm gonna, because it takes time, then I'll go and I'll make another point here. I'll make another point here. But yeah. So what we're gonna do back on Phil's screen is so inside this minion pipeline, there are these 10 demo movies, okay? And those movies are calcium imaging analysis. I'll talk to you a little bit about what those are in a second. But we're going to have him now. He's checked out a library that does do, analysis. But he's going to actually now ask it to write a single script to process these files through the pipeline. And I'm clicking over to his screen, and I'm just looking real quick at your screen. Again, the tab to Phil Dong's screen is what you ought to be looking at right now. And okay, on my side, I'm actually, the prompt itself is a little bit hidden on the bottom. Okay, good. Yeah, maybe you guys can see it. So he goes, I have 10 video files under demo movies. Write a single script using Minion Pipeline to process all of them. Put everything under a self-contained folder called single script. Okay, great. Yes, so that's what he's running. Okay, cool. Now, we are benefiting from the fact that Phil is the author of this pipeline, so he knows what good answers look like, and he knows how he would approach this particular problem. That's why we picked this as an example. But as it's working there, you're seeing it do a few different things. You're seeing it look through the directory structure. You're seeing it read pipeline.py, which it had identified in the previous step as being an important script file to work with. You're seeing some errors, which it is recovering from in real time as it's doing that. The errors are related to it's trying to read some code files that are larger than a limit that it puts on itself per file, that it doesn't want to exceed its own context. What you see here is the agent now has a sense for what is too big of a file to open in the moment, to work on. And there's a prompt for Phil here. So it's gotten a little of the ways through, and it's asking Phil for some permissions. Okay, and this is an important thing. What it's done in order to do a better job of reading through this pipeline and to begin to write this script is it has actually written its own Python script to help itself write the script that Phil wants to write, which is also just like a little bit mind blowing. So this agent knows how to write code, and it decided that the best way to help Phil write this code was to write this little script, which you don't, I mean, it's helpful to understand for sure. But I can tell you generally, it's not going to like delete everything on your computer. Like that's the last thing that it's going to write. But it does want to ask you permission before it starts running arbitrary code on your system. And this one, it looks like what it's basically doing is it's doing a double loop. No, it's doing a single loop across some stuff that it found inside a pipeline notebook file. And it just wants to summarize what it's finding by printing some stuff to the screen, which will then make it easier for it to understand what's going on in that particular file. So Phil, I'd say go ahead and proceed, hit yes, and the second option there was just every time you want to write Python script, go ahead and do it. And eventually, okay, so this is a slightly different version of the script. So eventually you kind of get tired of that and go ahead, Phil. Yeah. So then you'll just pick option 2 and say, go ahead and go do it. Okay. Because you'll be tired of it asking every 2 seconds to write a script that obviously isn't a destructive thing on your computer. Okay, so now it's continuing to run. It's kind of fun to watch it run. I mean, depending on your level of understanding in coding, this may mean more or less to you. Okay, here's another one. All right, now it's asking for some additional access. So in this case, yeah, it's asking for access to the minion folder, which I think it should have. So go ahead. It's asking for access to the folder where it can access additional scripts. And so it's continuing. Ooh, we're getting some good questions here. So, okay. So all the stuff that it had been doing, you can see it says there, maybe you can highlight it, Phil. Now I have all the information needed. Let me create the self-contained folder and script. You see that? So it is, yep. So it's highlighted there. So all the stuff before was like, okay, I need to read this. I need to read that. And it did the reading by writing little mini scripts to teach itself what it needed to know to then write you this single script, which again, kind of mind-blowing. It confronted errors. Every script that it wrote did not execute perfectly. As you can see, some things in there said broken pipe error, and then it rewrote the script to adjust for the error that it just read that it had in order to then go ahead and proceed. And that is this big agentic mindset shift that it's able to kind of go through these problems. Okay, so now it's like I have that info. Let me make the script. And now it's saying, okay, I have the script. Do you want me to write it, basically? And I guess go ahead, Phil. Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. And so it is doing the writing and doing the editing there. And I thought we'd have more time in between these sessions, honestly, here. So it's kind of exciting to watch it all happen. Yes. Okay. So let me answer some questions because they're coming from you guys and they're coming fast and furious. So, all right. If you can't do the job yourself, how can you check that AI has done the job correctly? One person asks. It's a good question. In this case, we very much are leveraging the fact that this is code that Phil wrote, and this is a way also for us to gain confidence in the system. What I'd sort of say is that you do this in an iterative process of gaining trust for the agent. Okay. So you check that AI has done the job correctly by making it check for you and convincing you that it has done the job correctly. Much like if you have an intern, if you've had the experience of having an intern, and you say, go do this job. And then they come back and they're like, here it is, I've done it. And then you say, okay, tell me more though, right? Anything that you are skeptical about or you're not sure the way that it went about doing it, you can ask it. You can ask it to investigate the code that it wrote and explain to you what all of it does, if you'd like. And so that becomes the new pattern of verification, is working together with the agent. Now, it is writing the code, and objectively, if you do read code, you can go read the code. And Phil does read code, and so Phil can look at the code that gets written, and he can look at it and say, actually, this looks about right. But if you aren't a code reader or writer, I would say lean more heavily on having it explain it, and having it explain it even line by line, right? You can go look at the code and you can say, between lines 30 and 50, I have no idea what you are doing. What is happening here? And it will tell you. So if that's your definition of correctness. Now, we are going to get a little bit later to seeing that in a way, the outputs here, just because the script is written, are not necessarily what you want the first time that it comes out. And that is important to also recognize, because as much as this agent is doing and as useful as this is, there are still limits, and we're going to touch on those limits shortly. All right. You guys are so great. There's so many great questions here. I'm going to take one more question, but then I will have to continue on. So next question is, does it work with MATLAB? Yes, it works with MATLAB. Works with MATLAB. That's an easy question to answer. And I see a hand being raised, by the way. If you're raising your hand, better to just, if you can put your question into the chat that's going, I will address questions sequentially. But thank you for the hand. So yes, it will work with MATLAB. I'd say Python is very comfortable and familiar, because Python is open source, and Python is a thing that this agent's very happy to install for you and deal with dependencies on, etc. With MATLAB, you would definitely want to have it already installed on the machine that you're working with. But this agent knows MATLAB. Claude Code knows MATLAB, and pretty much any coding agent that you're gonna work with is gonna work with kind of any language, really, at this point. So it's very powerful that way. Okay, so now let's go away from the questions for a minute and go back to what's on. Again, we should be on Phil's screen. So on Phil's screen, it says it's created this self-contained script, and here's what it does. And it explains what it's doing. It processes the 10 files. It tells you exactly what part of the code it's uses the minion process function, which runs preprocessing, motion correction, cell initialization, CNMF fitting, sets up a Dask, local cluster. What even is that, right? But it's a thing to do parallel processing, saves results as netcdf files, and generates diagnostic figures as HTML files. Again, the specifics of what this program is doing is less important than you're seeing that, you could jump into a code base that you're not super up to speed on and have the agent begin to write code for you and explain to you what it's doing. And it can go even further to explain than what we're doing right here in the course of this session. It's telling you a little bit about what the output is going to look like. So it's made this thing process_all.py, and it's showing you where stuff is going to come out, and it shows you how to use it, and it shows you what additional parameters you could use. Okay. Now, if anybody's ever seen a cooking show where they put all the ingredients in a bowl and then they pour the bowl into a baking tin, and then they put the baking tin into the oven, and there's two ovens, and it's like, that's the bottom oven, and then out of the top oven they pull the thing that already has baked. Well, we have done this before, and because the actual running of this pipeline takes time, we're going to show you what some of the output is that has come out of the last time that we did this process here. Okay, so if you go back to my slides real quick, while Phil is bringing that up, if you change that tab back to my screen, just real quickly, I said I'd explain calcium imaging. So in a calcium imaging experiment, you're using a microscope, you're looking at neurons. In this case, you're actually looking at live neurons in a live brain. Pretty cool. And you have done something to the neurons to make them light up and flash when they're active. You're looking at the concentration of calcium inside of those cells. It's pretty awesome. So what this whole pipeline is that we've been working with is basically to take the movies that you'd record from the microscope, looking at these neurons with their calcium intensities, and then try to extract the activity over time after you've identified the difference between cells. So you have to separate the cells from each other to be able to track individual neurons from the movie, which of course just comes to you as a set of pixels. Okay, so that's what the movies that we were processing were about. That's what they were doing. Okay, so all right, yeah. So this slide is going to be the next thing we're going to see. Let's look at the data on Phil's screen. Um, Phil, you want to pull up the image? Yes. Okay. So this is the kind of figures that the Minion pipeline tends to spit out. These figures were not made up by the AI, I will tell you. This was a thing where it was already using the pipeline, but these are figures that are very typical, the kinds of figures that the Minion pipeline outputs already. And the I guess maybe I'll just have Phil real quick, like come off mute and just explain what these figures are showing so that the audience can kind of understand. And then once you've explained what they're supposed to show, then we can talk a little bit about the quality of what the result was.
Yeah, totally. So usually in a pipeline like this, the input data is a video, and you can picture that as a black and white video of little cells kind of flashing on and off. And the goal is to extract the location of cells from a video like that, and extract the neural activity, temporal activity from a video like that, right? So the plot showing here is basically a visualization of this process. So in the background here, you see the black and white. That's kind of the raw-ish of the data. You went through some processing, but that's essentially what your input data looks like. And then you see these colorful circles on top of them. That is where the pipeline think there are cells on each of them, right? So the pipeline try to find their location and try to tell them apart if they are sort of overlapping with each other a little bit, right? So that's kind of showing you how well the pipeline is doing in terms of extracting the location of cells. On the right, you have a time by cell plot, basically, where each row is a kind of a colored, pseudo-colored temporal activity of cell, where, like brighter color means it's higher activity. And, you see, if you're familiar with calcium imaging and you squint enough, you see some sort of activity for some cells here that seem to have a like a typical calcium dynamic where they sort of rise and then there's a long tail of decay. You see some cells have this kind of always firing property. Those are probably something wrong with the pipeline extracting them. So this is a typical result from a calcium processing pipeline like this. And again, as Stephen said, this is the result we got last time we run through the AI generated code. And this is roughly what you get. Yeah,
Cool.
that's pretty much
Okay.
it.
So the figures are familiar to Phil, but then the performance of the actual algorithm of the steps here, this is where we had to do some iterations and we're actually still not fully happy with the output. And so I want to just kind of explain the difference here. So whereas Phil was able to essentially write one line and or to, like a quick prompt and get output out. What we haven't yet gotten the AI to do is to give perfect results from the scientific output. And that's because this particular pipeline relies on the setting of parameters and the choosing of a set of parameters and getting those parameters fit well to the actual scientific data that are here. And there is an element still of sort of human and scientific judgment that goes into that. Now, what I will say is that the very first output that we got from the pipeline was still quite a bit worse than this. And so when we got the first version of this, there weren't even really that many of those. You see those colored circles in the upper left-hand corner with the blue and the red and the yellow. There was like two or three of those, and then but most of them were just like little dots. And so it was clearly missing a lot of the cells. And then what we said was, hey, the output wasn't so great, you need to try again, basically. Like, we didn't get a good output. And it used that little amount of input to go through and do another iteration to figure out that there were parameters that it needed to change those parameters and get them going in a better direction and to get what you see here. But it's going to be important as I'm going to talk throughout this presentation to say that like the AI doesn't just, solve the problem for you, but what it does do is it solves a lot of the coding part of the problem because now when it's just reduced to picking the right parameters, well, okay, that's a thing that like a scientist or a data scientist can take over and just focus on getting the parameters looking better, right? Rather than writing a ton of code in whatever language to get to even have the ability to put the parameters in a way that are going to work better. So that's where things are starting to shift is less focus on the writing of every line of code. And then of course dealing with bugs and all that have to deal with like the running of the code and shifting the understanding and the learning to, okay, this is a pipeline. I'm trying to understand what it does mathematically and analytically. The code is there to support that process, but it's no longer it's more and more no longer the impediment to getting that analysis pipeline built. It's now much easier to collaborate with these agents to do that. Okay, so and that's if you go back to my slide and where I'm at, that's what this slide here, real quick, is showing. So the reality of AI generated results. So the script ran successfully, the pipeline completed, but parameters needed human judgment and tuning. Okay, so and we are confident that with continued work on this, either with maybe Phil needs to jump in and do the last mile of tweaking the parameters, possibly, or by trying to get a bit further down the road of getting the agent to understand what good actually looks like, right? We can get to the kinds of results that we've always been able to get to because Phil has experience with this. But yeah, that's where the next mile kind of kicks off. Okay. So then again, back on my screen with my slides. So this is what we're saying. The shift in data science is moving from writing the code on the keyboard to understanding the actual analysis process. So what is that algorithm actually doing? Why these parameters? Why this approach and not another? And as I was saying before, if you're not one that's super expert on the code itself, you can keep going in a conversation with an agent to have it explain to you and break down the process even better. And we'll get to that in a second. So, all right. Okay, I realize actually that there is another step here that we said that we would do, and I don't have a slide for. So, Phil, real quick, just back on your screen, do you mind doing a prompt and say, okay, build me some unit tests to verify that this process works correctly? Now, unit tests are a thing maybe you're not familiar with if you're not a software engineer. But it is kind of code, like human language code, for asking the agent to have smaller bits of code that test the code that you have written is actually working correctly. And then there's this idea once you have unit tests of having a test suite, which then when it runs, if each test passes correctly, it gets a little check mark, and it's a thing that in software engineering best practices and in data science best practices is worth doing, especially when you make changes to code and you want to make sure that things that used to work still work. You kind of write more code to make it work. So if Phil goes ahead, yes. So it's asking Phil if he is okay to edit the script that he wrote. Sometimes when you write unit tests, you like change the code that you created in order to make it an easier time for the unit test to actually be created. So yeah, if you can go ahead and say
I
yes
think,
to
Stephen,
that.
there's an interesting point here. I think while
Oh
it's
yeah,
trying to
what's going
create
on?
test, it found some linting error, and that's why it's trying to do. Like
Ah,
something wrong
okay.
is stupidly wrong here, and it's figured it out.
Okay. Yeah, it fixed a little bit of usually linting is like a formatting thing, but yeah, great. So it's proposing to make an edit. Yeah, it's proposing to edit the original file, and now, yep, and another one as well. So he sort of kicked off this process of writing unit tests. I think it's a good practice to do, especially if you have more complicated analytic pipelines to have these sorts of tests. And again, in the pre-AI world, writing unit tests is one of those things that everybody's like, it's a good thing to do, but who wants to do them because they are kind of annoying and you have to think about like, hey, well, what's actually a good test? The agent's pretty good at coming up with tests that are like pretty meaningful. An example is like one of those plots, for example, that you saw before is part of a graphing library. And so a nice test is just, can I write that kind of plot at all? Right? And that helps you verify that like the library is still current and that you're able to put scientific data on that plot, that sort of thing. So that'll kind of be what's happening there. All right, so that's working, and that's going to take a little bit of time. Let me go to another question here. And let's see. Okay, so somebody was asking about this thing where it either says, um, where it says it asks for your approval to do the thing or to do the thing in the future. And the question is, when you do that, is it just for that particular part you're permitting repeatedly with two or all future actions? So it actually tells you in the prompt, in the reply. It says yes or so option one is yes. Option two is yes for, and then it says something, right? And so I would say, oh, here we go. So here's the example. Okay, so it says, before you hit it there, Phil. So it says, do you want to proceed? And here it's actually running the test. That it's come up with the command on the command line to actually run the tests that it just wrote. We didn't even read the tests. We didn't even see the tests. It's already running them. Okay. But it says, do you want to proceed? And it's either yes or yes, and don't ask for similar commands in this directory. Okay. So to understand that, you kind of understand like, well, what's similar to this command? This is like having the agent run your Python code within your directory. So you just have to pay attention to what it's saying. Later, it'll may ask you to do other things, and those other things may be things you do not want it to do in general, but it will be specific about that. Okay, great. All right, and so we're saying yes, and we're running the test. Great. And okay, so it looks like it's running them and writing them a little bit. Okay, what's it doing? Ah, yes. Okay, and then again, yeah, it's asked for some additional permissions, and it's continuing on. By the way, at any point here, Phil could hit escape. And I'm not, I don't do it, Phil. But if you want to stop this process, if you, for example, see it executing something that you're like, no, 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 please don't do that, actually, you can hit escape and it will just stop. Okay. So it does have that aspect of the intern, but you're looking over their shoulder and you're watching what they're doing. And so I do recommend, certainly when you first get started with these things, that you do watch it. And even if you don't fully understand what every certain single command is, because it will be doing stuff on the command line, you can get a general sense and confidence, especially at the beginning, that mostly it's just going to either be reading stuff, it's going to be writing new stuff, or it's going to be editing the stuff that it wrote. That's pretty much where it's going to be. If it starts to go outside of that and it's like, hey, I want to go edit other things that I haven't touched before, it will generally ask you your permission. But if somehow it goes outside of that, and that's maybe happened 1% of the time, you can just hit the escape button and stop it. So you are in control of that at all times. But the default is that it just wants to do things for you, make you happy. So it's going to try to do things on your behalf. Okay, so now let's look at the screen, back on Phil's screen. So it says done. It says it's created the unit tests. All the tests pass. And you're like, what even are they? Okay. Maybe Phil, if you can on the left-hand panel, like show that there are tests now, that there's a test directory. Yep, there's a tests directory. And there's a conf test, which tests parameters, I guess, are being present. And then what else is there? Okay, there's multiple tests, but they're all in one test file, right? So it's created a bunch of tests within a couple files. So this one is like, can I get some default parameters? The next one is load the videos parameters, test the denoise parameters, test that the environment is set up okay. And then if it's like the last time, probably the more interesting ones are towards the bottom, right? Test process. Yeah, some can be a little trivial, like are the directories that I expect actually present? That one's like, okay, maybe they're a little bit of an overachiever on that one. But some of these other ones, let's see. Mm, yeah, call the minion process with correct arguments. Yeah, make sure that the arguments that if I put in particular arguments that it's going to do the thing that I expect it to do. Test creating that cluster with the correct parameters. Make sure that's going to do the thing I expect it to do. Um, okay, and it goes so on from there. So yeah, this is a thing depending on how, close or far away you are from code, may be more or less useful to you. But even if you're, very high level and you haven't gotten much into code, I would recommend generating yourself some tests and from time to time running them. Um, that does remind me of one other point, which is the use of version control. So, um, depending on where you are in your understanding of code, you've probably heard of GitHub and Git. Um, Agents like this are very happy to help you do version control, but you do have to ask it to do version control. So we have all of this that we're doing here has been under version control the whole time. We just haven't made a point of it. If you want, if you're working with new code, you can ask Claude, for example, to say, "Hey, commit all this to a GitHub to a Git repository, please," and it will do that. And we're generally going to recommend you do that when you're working with agents because it might do something that you don't expect it to do and you want to reverse. And version control is very good for reversing things. We haven't had it be a problem, but it is a best practice, and I would be remiss if I didn't name check it here. Okay, so that's the test part. Thank you, Phil. I'm going to go back to the slides now, and I'm going to keep going. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's some more exciting things to do still. All right, so visualization. All right, so the next visualization thing that we're going to do that Phil already did beforehand, but we're going to show you how it works anyway, is we're going to imagine some data that we don't actually have, but we're going to use as a part of a plot. So this was a thing that we came up with mainly for demo purposes because we didn't have exactly the data that we wanted to use for this presentation. But even in your own hands, it can also be useful for you to try running something through an analysis pipeline even before you've got the full data itself, and ask sort of what if scenarios. So go ahead, Phil, and do the create the fake CSV. If we go back to Phil's screen, so the idea is that in the case of calcium imaging, you're looking at neurons. And in a neuroscience context, there's a second modality of data that you are usually interested in, which is in the case of a live animal, case of mouse. You want to know what the mouse is actually doing in the world because it's awake and it's behaving, and you're looking at its brain while it's doing something. It's pretty cool neuroscience stuff. If you're not in a neuroscience space, right? But let's say, you had RNA-seq data, maybe you'd also want to know something about the protein expression in given cells. So this really applies anytime you might have two modalities of data that you want to assemble together at the same time. And in this case, one of the modalities of data is real because we had those movies from the Minion pipeline. But now we're going to imagine having that behavioral kind of data that we don't actually have. So we're asking it to come up with this, call it fake, call it mock data, might be another way to put it, that is applicable here for putting alongside the real calcium imaging data that we got. And so he's writing this prompt, create a fake CSV file, behavior events CSV with behavior and event timestamps corresponding to 2000 frames of calcium imaging data, then generate another script to plot the peri-event activities using the processed calcium imaging data under results demo.nc. Yeah, okay. And do you want to, yeah. Now, the first time I went through this with Phil, his prompt was less specific. And now I think he's benefited from knowing what happens because in the agentic world, there's a point here, which is that the better that you use English, the better the agent will serve you. Okay. So rather than having to be really focused on code, you do actually have to think a little bit about, am I telling it something that's ambiguous, right? Am I having it have to read my mind, or am I having it have to guess what I want? Okay. and usually don't want it to do that. You usually do not want to have to put it in a position where it wants to guess. Oh, but Phil, here, hang on a second. Hit escape real quick. Hit escape real quick, Phil. Okay, so we interrupted it because we did leave out one thing that's on the slide here that's important, which is adding a pro tip to this. So Phil, just type real quick. Say, ask me any additional questions that you'd need to do this well, and you can do it right now, even though we've already launched that prompt. So just say, ask me any questions. Yeah, yeah. Continue the previous, yep, task, and ask me any questions that you want to clarify the requirements. Yes. Yes. Good, good, good. Yeah. Yep. Great. Okay. Now, this is a pretty cool thing also because and that's also a way we got where we ended up being more specific actually the second time. But the first time we did this. And so check this out, what's happening on screen here at the bottom right-hand corner on Phil's screen. It says, which calcium signal would you like to use for the peri-event analysis? And it's actually oh yeah, it knows something about the code. And so it's actually picking variable names. Looks like Phil wants to, yeah, go ahead, write something different though. Which calcium signal would you like to use for the peri-event analysis? Why not plot all of them? Great. Okay. And clearly label them. Aha. Okay. In legends. Great. And so that's question one. This is like a little tabbed interface. So once he hits enter to select that, it'll go to the next question. Time window. What time window around each event should be extracted? And it's 30 to 60, 15 to 45. And here we're saying, why not leave it as an argument in the top of the script. Okay, but it does need a default, so you can say what default you want it to be, maybe. Um, yeah, cool. So just know what's happening here, right? Uh, we gave it an instruction. It was actually a lot more specific than it had been in the past, but now, it has come back because we asked it to ask it questions in the scientific domain, not about code exactly, really, but in the scientific domain to get a better sense of what sort of things Phil wants. So yeah, go ahead, Phil, whatever visualization type you'd like. Just type it in. Yep. He's using, yeah, we want average. Yeah. So this is a thing that you can use in your own work with agents, is having it ask you back questions that improve the results that it's going to produce for you. Things you might not have even have thought to specify the first time. When you get comfortable in a particular domain, you probably won't need to do this. But if you're just getting into it in the first place and you kind of don't know what you don't know, this is a really, really helpful pro tip. So, okay, great. So now he's going to submit those answers and it's going to carry on from there. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Phil. So that both showed you that you can pause a thing, escape it in the middle, add to a prompt, and then keep going after that. Okay. And so back on my screen there, while that's working, I'm just going to underline that point, which is this thing. Ask me any questions. You need to do this effectively. Forces the agent to clarify requirements before coding, surfaces assumptions that you didn't know that you were making, and results in better first attempt code. So I definitely think using this, oh, yeah, better first attempt code. There we go. So I think I would recommend definitely using this pattern yourselves. Okay. And let's see what we get. So I don't know if are we gonna get the plots before we, yeah, let's bring up what it made the last time. Again, using the cooking show technique. We're gonna pull from the oven that already has the baked goods in them while it's working. So when we ran this before, we got plots that looked like this. Okay. And I think the important thing to note is like Phil said nothing about what plotting library to use, colors, um, He didn't specify what should be on the top and what should be on the bottom, right? And what we ended up getting plotted was, um, if there were 55 neurons that were in that scene, he got 55 plots, or whatever the number is. He got one plot per cell. And then it turns out with this graph, the calcium trace is on the top and the behavioral graph is on the bottom. Again, the domain isn't particularly important, but that's what he got. Now, is that what he wanted? Is that what he needs? Is that, the best thing for him to get? Probably not. But Phil, if you wouldn't mind actually just showing the plotting script itself that it wrote, the code itself that generates that plot.
Yep. We can maybe take a chance and look at this. This is actually freshly generated.
This is the freshly generated one. Yeah,
Yeah, and it shouldn't be too much differently.
right. Let's start with how
Uh,
many lines is it?
this let's see. It's like 500 lines of code.
Like 500 lines of code.
Yeah.
And it's code that works the first time in that it will generate you stuff. And that stuff is, you know, certainly close to what you're looking for. And again, we know code, so we can read it and get more confidence that it's in fact doing the right thing. But if you know your data, you can already start by eyeballing it and seeing, if the data that are coming out look appropriate to the data that you put in, and you know, scrutinize it, right? Like, ask it to prove it to you. Literally type in, prove it to me that you're running this on my data if you have questions, right? Like you can take all of the fears that AI might be doing the wrong thing that you have and just channel them right back into the prompt and ask the agent to convince you that it's correct. And you might eyeball it and see, I don't know, something might have gotten duplicated that shouldn't have gotten duplicated or something. But like the point is that you can use the agent to walk you through that process and to build your trust with this system. Any observations you wanted to make on this script, Phil, as you're sort of getting into this yourself?
Uh, Not at the moment. It seems, let's see, it seemed to understand my requirement properly, figure out the path of everything correctly. Um, has this color for me to change, which is really nice. I always wanted that. Yeah, it seemed generally correct. And it's actually running the script right now. We'll see how long it's take. We can also look at the CSV generated. This is the first part of our prompt. We say generate this mock behavior event first, and then make a plot to use this data. Um, yeah, no, I mean, you can figure out CSV, no problem. It gives you uh, a kind of a data structure that's very typical in neuroscience, which is basically a table of frame, timestamp, what kind of events, some trial number, metadata, duration, and it's using this to generate the plot.
Very good.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you for that. So, going back to the plot, we'd look at it and we'd say, okay, it seems to have plotted the correct data, but maybe I don't want 55 separate plots. So that then invites you to go back to the agent and say, okay, but merge all those plots maybe into just a single plot and ask me any questions about how that merge should work or how it should look, or something like that. And you can iterate. But the part that you can gain confidence in is that it will do a pretty good job of writing the code to execute that new vision, and then it'll bring up some other plot, and then maybe you look at that plot and you're like, okay, that's closer, but then you got to change this and that. But you're interacting with it at the level of natural language, not at the level of needing to edit the code directly. You can still edit the code, but you don't necessarily need to. Um, okay, awesome. Thank you, Phil. I'm wanting to make sure we get to the end here, so I want to go on to another demo. So sorry for folks who've asked questions. I'm gonna try to get to them before we close, but Got to get through this. Okay, so now let's do one more prompt, okay, that we had touched on before. Okay, so now we've gotten some data, we've run some, we've actually built a new processing script. We have run the data through that pipeline. You didn't see that part, but trust us, it did run the data through that part of the pipeline. Then we generated some new um, mock data, and then we visualize it in a graph. So now if Phil can on his screen write something like this prompt, which is we want to say, write me a concise description of methodology that would be appropriate for a supplemental method section of a scientific paper. Um, so what we're asking it to do is kind of like what we asked it at the beginning, which is like, tell me what this code library does. But instead, we're actually asking it to do something even more interesting, in my opinion, which is to like tell us what we just kind of did and what is happening not at the level of code, but what's happening at the level of analysis that we've been talking about. So summarize both the processing and peri-event plot and write a methodology section that would be appropriate for scientific publication. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now, I am not endorsing copying and pasting this into your papers, word for word. But when we did this before, what we got definitely helped us to think clearly about what all the different parts of the methodology were that the code were doing. If this is a code base that you're not familiar with, I also don't recommend that you just drop this in. But again, um, very much having a starting place can be useful. In our professional work, we have gotten asked this a lot. Once Phil is done with a thing, the paper needs to get written, and it's kind of like, hey guys, can you write something for a method section? But you could do this at any point as well. You could have done this at the beginning and say, hey, this code base, I don't know what it does. Explain to me what this does, but not in terms of code. Explain it to me in terms of analysis methods. Explain it to me in terms of math. Like you could have done that at the beginning. And this is what you will get. Looks like it's writing a methodology markdown file. Okay, yeah, let's actually look at the methodology markdown file because what it does is it'll write it and then sometimes it'll summarize it. So this is it. It's in markdown format. But you can also get it to put it in like HTML if you want to put it into like a doc. You can copy and paste it into a Google Doc or a document. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to read all this verbatim, but I think the points to understand here is that we'll describe stuff in the context of the method as it understands it. So if you just pause the scrolling there one sec and just say like Harry event time histogram. Oh, okay, went off the screen. Okay, peri-event time histogram analysis. To examine neural responses to behavioral events, we extracted calcium activity and time window surrounding each event, -10 to +60 frames relative to event onset, corresponding to approximately -0.33 to 2 seconds at 30 FPS. The nice thing is like it knows all those numbers from the code because it knows the parameters that it set and it has some understanding of what they are, AI understanding, of course. Looks like there's a thing in there where it would translate into an equation if we formatted this in LaTeX. Ooh, can we do that? Oh, okay. There we go. Very nice. Ooh, very nice. There's the equation. Signal normalization. So it knows what it's doing in terms of math. That's very lovely. And then, of course, it can tell you what statistics were done and what packages were being used for the code part of it. But all the stuff above is speaking really like analysis methodology, not code. Okay. And then finally, let's do the last thing here, which is turn that method section into a process diagram. So go ahead and do that, Phil. And we're gonna now one pro tip here is we're invoking a particular diagram library that I happen to know will work, and which is open source and which has an open source rendering service that is online called Plant UML. Again, not a thing that is sponsoring me or anything, but it can be effective for this. And so we're saying now turn that process into a plain UML diagram, focus on the structure uh, and processing, focus on the structure and processing block. Use the online, oh yes, use the online like server for rendering this into a PNG, I think. Okay, some of this is certainly relying on knowledge that we have about kind of what systems are out there and what formats can work well. But again, to actually do this, it's going to write a text file that has this very specific diagramming language associated with it. And then it's going to send that file over to a server that lives somewhere on the web that you don't have to know what the address of it is. And then it's going to come back as a picture. That's the code that then goes to execute it. It's writing a Python script to take that code and to execute the rendering of it. And then it's downloading the result back to your machine. So yeah, go ahead and say yes. Um, and here, I guess the thing that's interesting is it is actually accessing an outside server, something off of Phil's machine that he didn't have to know about, didn't have to know the address, didn't have to know how to use it, didn't need to know what the API was. It's kind of crazy. And it's oh, okay. I think he got an SVG instead of a PNG, but let's see. Let's see what he got. Let's see what he got. It's coming down. Hmm. Okay, it's using, yeah, PNG save successful. Oh, I guess it did both. I guess it did both the SVG and the PNG. That's nice. Those can both be useful in different ways. Okay, verify diagram files. The first time we did this, the diagram needed a couple of iterations, I will say, just in terms of what we wanted it to look like. We didn't include some of those specifications this time, but it is such a effective demo when you can just look at the thing as it came off in real time. So let's give it a whirl, Phil. Let's see what we got this time. Pipeline diagram,
A
SVG.
little bit
Oh,
too verbose.
a little too verbose, but let's zoom in for folks to see that that it's actually written stuff. Sometimes when you ask for diagrams from AI, you get like gibberish English or like non-English or non-words, and this doesn't do that just because of the way that it happens to work. So it's a very large diagram. It you obviously have to zoom in, but yeah, it's got columns for the right steps: data acquisition, processing. I don't see what the headers are. Let's just look at the headers real quick. Yeah, motion correction, cell initialization, CNMF iteration 1 and 2, and output. Okay, cool. And then inside there, it looks like it's got these sub blocks that break down the process as well. And again, Phil, you know how this actually works as you built this. Does this look like like sensical to you?
Yeah,
Is this like
yeah,
kind of what the process is?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's crazy that you can just do this. Like this didn't exist 3 minutes ago, like at all. And now it does. And now it's a diagram. So it's a big time saver. And for me, the possibilities are really, really exciting. Okay, back on my screen and my slides. All right, what did we say here? Okay, yeah. In this presentation here, we were talking about like, maybe an error being kicked up and fixing its own mistakes. We've seen a little bit of that as we've gone through it. We didn't see it in this particular part of the presentation, so I'm going to keep going, but it is possible sometimes to generate a thing that doesn't work. But the agent, because it reads its own error messages, you do not have to tell it what is wrong. It will very often go into a loop to then fix the thing that it, for whatever reason, made some mistake. Maybe it's like, oh, I was looking at the earlier version of the API. I need to look at the new version of the API. And then it goes and does that, but it very often resolves itself. Um, and yeah, okay, so I was going to go into more detail there, but this principle, even though we didn't see it in this particular run, is a thing that I've seen many times, and we saw little bits of it as we went along earlier. Okay, so we've got 12 minutes left. Let's talk for a second about planning mode. Um, Phil, if you can go back to the agent, if you go back to Phil's screen. So we've been in this mode where it's basically like ask Claude to do something, and then it does it. Ask Claude to do another thing, and it does it. Pause Claude from doing a thing by hitting escape, and it stops. Then we can add another prompt. There's another mode if you hit Shift Tab, or I hope that is what the way the buttons work on your thing, Phil. Yeah, okay. So if you look just below the prompt, can you shift it again? Just below the prompt, there's a little line there that is shifting between green and purple. Yeah, there you go with the highlight. That's great. It says plan mode on. Okay. Plan mode is huge. Okay. So we don't have time to go into a ton of the advanced ways to use plan mode, but basically, what did we do last time when we said plan mode? Do you remember? What we were doing the planning with?
I think we have specific requirements that gets translated into skills and carries over for future.
Right,
Like
right, right.
I don't want like extra space or something.
Right. Okay, yes. But for this one, like I don't know, let's pick anything. Let's say okay, let's use something that's real. Actually, this will be interesting. So let's say, the results from the pipeline um have improved, but still need more work to get the perfect output. How can we improve the output? Yeah, something like this. So here in plan mode, the point of it, the purpose of it is that instead of writing stuff and trying to take action, Claude will take a step back and it will instead write a plan that may have many steps of actions that it will take, and it will wait to do it, and it will let you review its approach. And you can iterate on the plan. This is a really good thing to do when you don't exactly know what you want, or you're trying to bite off a thing that seems way bigger than what this agent should even do, or that you certainly would want to check it as it's going. So anything like that, you hit Shift Tab and go into this plan mode. Okay. You're still just writing a prompt, but what your expectation is, instead of like doing something, is that it's going to write this other document that it calls a plan file, and that you're going to get to review it. So yeah, go ahead. I think like that. Now it will sometimes still take action in terms of reading, because in order to make the plan, it may go back through your code base. It may try to look at your results. It will collect up information. Yeah, so it's using the Explore tool. So it's trying to understand how to make a better plan here. But again, we don't have time to go too much into this. I'll keep going to the next thing, and maybe we can check back in on what plan it made. We certainly don't have time to iterate or execute on it, but definitely play with plan mode. It is a thing that, is only really there in the agentic way of thinking. It's not really there so much in like the ChatGPT kind of space. So other than maybe like, yeah, deep research does it a little bit, but this is a whole nother level of that. Okay. And then back to my screen, if you want to tab back to me and my presentation, just kind of get out of the way here. Okay, yeah. Uh, so other topics that are advanced here that are really helpful that yeah, we were sort of thinking about a little bit is so like Phil has a particular way he likes to format his code. He doesn't like a lot of line breaks. And that's a really interesting thing that we haven't found lots of good solutions to outside of an agentic way of operating. Like what exactly is the formatting standards? Yes, software engineers will be quick to say that there are code formatters that operate, on code, and you can use those things. But here we wanted the agent to actually never write code that needed to then go and be formatted. We actually wanted the agent to spit out code formatted in the way that we wanted it the first time, not with a secondary code formatter. And so there are these things called Claude skills, and any agent is going to have this, which is basically those instructions that it reads the first time that it starts up invisibly without you having to tell it to to take that instruction. And you can expand on that, which is that when you want something done the same way repeatedly, you can say, "Hey, add this to your skill," and it will save it again it's on your computer at the end of the day, but it's saved in a space that it always reads every time it loads, and it will just use it. And it's surprisingly effective at getting what you want each time. Actually, I didn't really notice this time around, Phil, but did the code that it wrote like kind of adhere to your formatting standard? Um,
We
or
didn't
did
put
it?
in the scale file. But
Oh, we didn't add the skill file at the beginning.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it was
but
a starting blank.
it was starting from blank. Okay. Well, sometimes you don't even have to tell it though. But yeah, so you got spaces out in the code, is what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, for some also.
Okay, all right. Well, if you run into this, again, you can interrogate the agent itself and say, "Hey, I thought you had a skill to do blah blah blah." I wouldn't do it now, but I thought you had a skill to do blah blah blah. Can you make sure that that's in there? I don't see the thing that I want, and it very usually it'll be like, "Oh yes," it'll add it back in. But anyway, yeah, there's different patterns that you can incorporate here. All right. And so, as we are getting down to the end of this, I'm going to start doing some summarizing here. We'll click back when we get the plan and take a look at it. But as we're getting to the last 5 minutes, so what AI is good at. So as you've seen from this 90 minutes, and thank you for sticking with us, if you're still here, it excels at plotting, bootstrapping scripts really quickly, generating diagrams, writing documentation, and iterating with you. But you still need expertise to know what's the right visualization you want. You still need expertise for doing parameter optimization, for judging the quality of stuff that comes out, for domain-specific decisions, and for tasks requiring deep judgment. I think even though you still need this expertise, and kind of thank goodness, right? Because we still want to be able to do productive stuff as humans. We can't let the robots do everything. But all this stuff goes so much faster when you have these agents helping you do the stuff that's on the left, and it really keeps you focused on what you're supposed to be thinking about, which is like the science and solving the scientific problems and going on doing great things and making great discoveries, right? Like that's what we should be spending our time doing. And that's very exciting. So, key takeaways for today is this agentic mode. For me, this has been a big aha moment to understand, even for myself, what the agentic paradigm can bring you. Even 6 months ago, I still hadn't gotten it. So you're really getting this fresh if you haven't ever played with this before. The ask me questions pattern that we put in there really, really is valuable. It will force clarification before coding. It will get you better prompts. You just have to add it in, and it's very easy. You've seen that iteration is really quick. You've seen how to make documentation, both method sections, diagrams, and the top level documentation of what is even this code happens automatically in minutes. And then yeah, finally, you bring judgment and AI brings speed. Um, so if we're the very last few minutes here, I do just want to say if this has whetted your appetite and you're interested in more detail, we are offering a 6-week intensive course that will let you go much deeper on this stuff, where you get much more personalized interaction with myself and Phil. We'll work together with your actual data sets. We're going to do it over, I think we'll start in 2 weeks from now. We'll have office hours for you. And we'll do this in small groups so that you get personalized attention. Also, if you don't feel comfortable doing this on your personal computer, we can give you access to our cloud workspace where you have a sandbox up in the cloud that you don't have to worry is going to mess with your own stuff. And we can do it in that way as well. That is also just fine. So those are some of the things that are included. This is sort of a sense of what we'll sort of build. In the first week, we'll start with just setting things up with the environment. We can go into code generation and testing, mastering planning mode, working with publication-ready visualizations, doing some of those parameter tuning steps that we talked about, and then scaling up. And are we ready to put the application in chat? I think we might not be, but we will follow up with email for everybody with an application link if this is a thing that you are interested in, and we'll get back to you within 48 hours. So I know this was like a whole a brain dump of stuff, but I hope it was useful for you folks here. We've got 2 minutes left. And let me see if I can take additional questions. If you have to go now, that's cool, but I'm going to try to answer the questions that are remaining in the time that I have. So thank you so much if you have to leave right now. And if you want to hang around, I'm going to answer these questions. So cheers, you guys. Thanks for the reactions there. Appreciate you all. Okay. And if you're still with me, um, let me try to answer some questions. All right. So, next question asks, suppose this, please. I have an EDF file from QEEG, 32 channels, 10 minutes recording. I also have the pipeline analysis form by different steps for graphical analysis of resting state with the eyes closed. The agent is capable of building one script with all the steps to be run in one step, question mark. Um, Okay, that's pretty involved. This was asked rather early in the presentation, so I think by now I'm hoping that the person who asked this has seen as we went through the process of analyzing one modality of data and then combining it with a second modality of data, that it is possible to get into doing that, and that the agent can help doing that. It's certainly something that we can do in the pre-agent universe. That kind of analysis doesn't scare us. The agentic stuff would only potentially accelerate the process of doing it and lead to less grungy code. But there's nothing about that process that I'm particularly worried about or be worried about doing. And by the way, our company does a lot with EEG. Yeah, that wouldn't be that hard. I would just say that, folks, we can bring folks to bear who have a lot of expertise in working with EEG data. They understand the analysis steps that are needed. So really, in this case, the agentic AI would just accelerate the process of writing the code in whatever libraries would be most appropriate. So yeah. So if the question was, can it be done in one step? I would say I wouldn't recommend any analysis be done in just one step. You'd want to like do a starting iteration again, like have the agent prove to you that it was doing the right thing, and then kind of go from there. Okay. I'm going to switch back here real quick. I'm still on the answering questions route, but Phil, if you did the plan file finish? Um,
Yeah.
the planning
Um,
finish, but did it kind of go on to creating a thing? I think it.
yep. I think you make a new folder with this. You come up with a metric, which you know
Okay. Okay.
I may
So
or
wait, but if
may
you
not agree, but yeah.
got it. Okay, but if you go back to Claude, um, try typing slash forward slash plan in the prompt. Forward slash plan. Yep. And should oh, it just went into the plan mode. Okay. Just ask it to show me the plan file. So I think what happened is we wrote the plan file and then we got excited and we actually said, go do it. And then it did it. But what we want to actually see is the plan file itself, because inside the plan file is the plan. Uh, uh,
Oh,
oh,
uh,
yes. Oh, yes. Okay, right. And then we got to the point where where we hit the limit. So that is the thing. The Claude Code plan has limits of how much you can do in a given session, and we just hit it. Okay, but guess what? It's on your computer. Do you see that MD file, Phil?
yep.
It gives the whole path to it right there. It's just got a weird name.
It's probably under cloud.
Uh, yeah, yeah, but it gave the path if you scroll down a little bit. Yeah. So
Oh,
dot Claude slash plans slash, yeah. Try to bring that file up and then we'll look at it. While you're doing that, I'll answer another question. Okay. Does it work with R? Someone asked. Yes, it works with R. It works with every language, and the open source languages are its favorite. Probably the languages it would do the worst with are super poorly documented, super closed source, very obscure languages that nobody's ever written anything about on the internet. That would be where I would say it wouldn't work well. But R is an open source language, it would do very well. Someone asked, will we get a recorded replay? Yes, we're going to post that. For this kind of example, can the AI produce the motion correction code on its own if I ask it on the prompt, or would I have to provide a library? Uh, oh, yeah. Well, yes. So uh, we haven't tried this ourselves. Um, uh, so it would absolutely write some version of motion correction code and it would give it to you. Um, I think it would also do some research on the internet to try to understand what kind of motion correction code would be appropriate. So if you wanted to have the AI just make its own motion correction code from scratch, I would recommend going into this plan mode and having it explain to you why that code is the code that it wants to make and how it knows that it's going to be good. Um, that would be a really good thing to do in planning mode. Um, because yeah, the difference between, reusing motion correction code that Phil wrote and making your own is that, you've just got that point of trust of the reference point of Phil knowing that, it's the appropriate kind of motion correction for this application, just based on the trust point of human experience. But the agent will absolutely write some kind of motion correction code for you, and it'll probably get results that to your eye will look reasonable. Um, you'll get the extra level of expertise if you talk to a human who's familiar with the different options that are there with motion correction codes, which will then let you have a smarter dialogue with the agent, right? So you could look at the output and be like, this looks good, but what else do I not know, or what other things am I not thinking about here? You could ask the agent to tell you that, and it might then give you some alternative options to try. But yeah, you absolutely can have it generate the motion correction code for you. You don't have to provide the library. Okay. And so the plan file is up now on Phil's screen. Uh, Thank you, Phil. And it starts off by saying it's going to create these files. And then it goes on to say what is in those files, and it defines the basic functions of those files. And then it goes on to explaining what sort of optimization process it's going to do. And then it says step 3, it's going to generate output with the result CSV. And then it tells you what files it's going to modify or reference. Um, and then it says what it's going to do for verification. And then it tells you what expected time it thinks it's going to take with the runs. So this is an example of a plan, and we did just run it without any modification. But what we could have done is we could have also just read this plan file and said, actually, I don't know about this process. Or you could have asked it like, why do you think this is going to work? Or, how are you able to read the output of this and know that it's getting better? Something like that. And that would be a very good way for you to interact with this particular system. Okay, but thank you for doing that, Phil. And later, you and I should check out what this actually did because I'm curious if it can improve on that. All right, 36 of you still here. Thank you. I still have some more questions. I'm going to try to get through all of them. If you have to leave, feel free, but I'm going to keep trying to answer some questions. All right, is it impossible for the AI generated results to distinguish the activities of individual cells from other cells that were out of focus because the grid lens minimally moved during the recording? Interesting. Is it impossible for the AI generated results to distinguish the activities of individual cells from other cells that were out of focus? Well, that's an interesting question. The AI is, and maybe Phil hasn't, will have an interesting reply to this. The question is sort of, from my perspective, is focusing on the AI part without noticing the human written part, where a lot of thought went into what it takes to do both the motion correction and the separation of the cells, right? So yeah, I don't know. What would you say to this, Phil?
Yeah, I think this is very similar to the motion correction function. People dump so much time and effort into, this problem, like in this calcium imaging, because, there are autofocus cells, there are algorithms designed to deal with this problem. So if you ask the AI to solve this problem and give it access to the internet, my guess is that AI is going to find the library that deal with this problem for you and maybe did the thing that we just did today. Like it's going to call the library function to do the analysis for you. But if you want to basically do a research project where you want to come up with your own novel algorithm to deal with this problem, then, we'll see, how much AI can help you in the research, but, there will be much more involved in terms of your research and how you approach this problem mathematically. So so I think on the surface it's kind of like the motion question problem. If you just want it to be solved using some third-party library, the AI can find it for you.
I think that's a great answer. That's a great answer. Yeah. Okay, let me continue on with a few more questions. Let's see if we can get all of them in before we have to drop. So unfortunately, I have to leave in a few minutes, but this is amazing. It seems to be exactly what I need. Is there a way to get this implemented as soon as possible? Yes. Well, that person feels free to join our course, and we can talk more about it. Also, you can send us email, and I can send you whatever information I can to help you get it going. Okay, another person asked, by not allowing people to see what others are saying in the chat and the QA, the discussion is suppressed. That's not a good open practice. Sorry, apologies. Honestly, that wasn't a conscious thing. That was more that our expertise with all the various hundreds of settings of Zoom aren't so great. We would have left it open if we had thought about how to do that. So next time we'll do that. All right, then whenever I ask Claude to generate code, it always creates pretty big code for small changes. It rewrites whole code. This always made me feel lost and getting nowhere. How should we work with agent while being productive and not being overwhelmed? Yeah, great question. Um, yeah, I would say it does do a lot and it can be overwhelming and it goes really fast and stuff like scrolls off the screen before the time that you have to do stuff. So what I would say is when you're just starting out with these agents, like you have to be the one to slow things down for the agent. Okay. You can, for example, hit that escape button. You could just keep hitting that escape button after it does anything, right? It could do one thing and then you could hit the escape button and be like, what did you just do? And it would tell you. Or if you want to wait until it gives you an actual output, right? Then you can be like, okay, I don't understand what you just did. And just write to it. You don't have to be embarrassed. There's no human in the loop. Like Claude isn't going to give you shade for expressing it. It's the perfect opportunity to be vulnerable because literally like nobody cares. Just ask it every single question that you have, anything that you're nervous about or worried about, just ask it. So if you're like, I feel lost, just say that, to say that to Claude, and it will explain to you what's going on. If you want to be more specific about exactly what you feel lost about, like have it tell you that. But it's pretty good at giving you a very detailed sense of what's there. And honestly, learning from these agents is almost as powerful as having these agents work on your behalf and do stuff for you. So yeah, that's what I would say there. Okay, next question. If you wanted to change something as simple as the color of the graphs, would you need to rerun the whole script? Well, yeah, I mean, I guess a few questions. If you start off your prompt by saying, I want to be able to have the plots with configurable colors, it will probably write the script in a way where you can launch it with those colors like on the command line if you wanted it to. Otherwise, if you just, look at the plots once and you're like, okay, now I want the plots to be this color and that color, certainly, yes, you can just, you know, have it rerun. What it will probably do is it will take the plotting file that it wrote, the plotting script that it wrote, and it'll go and it'll edit just like two lines or maybe even one line of code that has where the colors are. And then it will ask you if it's okay to edit that. And if you say yes, then when it runs again, it will replot. Yeah. So I think this question was maybe assuming that changing something as simple as the color of the graphs would be a big time investment, but like max, I could only imagine that the agent will take 30 seconds to do that for you. But it will do it by rewriting some code, and then you'll need to run it, and the running of it usually is quite fast too. Um, so yeah. But I think this is less of an AI question and more of just like a scientific plotting question. Like this is true even if we had no agent. If you want to change the color of your plots, you need to change something in some code and rerun it. That's true even outside. Okay. Question. All right. Let's see. Some people advise prompting in JSON format. Is it necessary for agent? Nope. You do not need to prompt it in JSON format. Not this agent, not Claude anyway. Okay, then next question. How do you credit cite uses like this in academic papers? They say AI can't be an author, but I find even AI helping me with my code is more than many co-authors contribute. That is a topic that is above my pay grade. I think there are certainly academic ethical standards that will need to be applied here. Um, you know, and I think journals are going to be increasingly asking you about your use of AI. Um, I think that it's fair game for in the publication world to be asked what all you're doing here. And I wouldn't misrepresent, I would not advise you to misrepresent that you aren't using AI when you are. We're being very open about it. And so where we can use it to help folks get stuff done, we'll tell them. Right. And so I think similarly with science, we shouldn't be we shouldn't be ashamed of that. I think every time that a big, powerful new tool comes along, we just say, this is the tool that we're using, and this is what it did, and this is what it did not do. Um, to the earlier point that I mentioned, right, you can say, like, well, Claude wrote the code, Claude wrote the graphs, but we needed to tune the parameters, or we devised this parameter, or we did it in collaboration with an AI agent that did this or did that. I wouldn't advocate, and I really, again, don't have a dog in the fight about like whether it should be an author, but I certainly think it should be in the methods. And interestingly, our method section didn't mention Claude, the one we generated, but I think it would be worth adding it down the road if we started, having AI making significant contributions to the package. But authorship, I think, is a different thing. Personally, I think citing a tool in a methods in a references and saying this is a tool that I use to do this stuff is would seem to be fair game to me. But again, every journal is going to have to make its own policy on that. Okay. Still 27 of you, so I'm going to continue. Thanks for sticking around. Somebody asked, let's see. All right. What if we had just typed create a process diagram in PNG without your extra prompts? Um, you just get you sometimes it'll trigger its own question asking process without you saying ask me any questions. But it won't always do that. So it might just create a process diagram with whatever it thinks is the most statistically likely way to do that it likes, right? Because that's under the hood what LLMs do. It might do a little bit of research online to say what are good ways to do process diagrams, but it might have also given you something that you didn't like as much. So I would recommend trying it. I think using AI in a way to learn what AI's capabilities are is a really good way to go about doing this stuff. So yeah. Um, all right. Let's see. Uh, let's see. How much space do you want on your computer to be able to store all these things, skill files, etc.? You don't need very much space at all. All these things are represented in text, and text files are the most compressible, small, tiny types of files that you'll ever put on your computer. So I'm not, I mean, like megabytes, basically, like not even gigabytes. This is not. The thing is, the large language model is on their servers, right? To be clear, it's not local to your machine. So that's an important point. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, good. We did post the application form. I didn't scroll down far enough. Great. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, is there a way to control the tokens used or maximize use of available tokens? Yeah. Since we did run into a token limit, I'll say a little bit more about that. Again, Anthropic doesn't pay me, but there are higher tiers of subscription that it makes available that have more tokens or have different session limits than the $20 plan. There's a $100 plan. There's a $200 plan. I'm not going to advise you which one to use. I'm also aware that there are other agentic um, systems that are out there. My goal really was just to teach you about why agents are important and different, not to sell you Claude subscriptions. Yeah, so I would say, go out there and now that you know more about what, agentic coding can look like shop around and see, what works well for you. I've found Claude Code to be very powerful for what I want to do. It's kind of on the pricey side compared to, say, a ChatGPT subscription, because I do personally use the higher tiers, I will say. But then again, I use all the quota all the time. Um, so I am, to be fair, burning up a lot on their servers. And that takes energy and all that stuff. So I end up thinking it's worth it to pay for the higher tiers. But yeah, that's just me. So yeah, and I think I've reached the end. There were a few grumpy comments, about this, and I just say, is it possible to misuse AI and do terrible things? Yeah, it's possible. If you want to pretend like you have qualifications that you don't, yeah, you can do that with AI. Turns out you can also make pictures that make it look like you got a selfie with, a celebrity if you want to, right? So, but nothing I think that I'm advocating here is that you misuse AI, more that you use AI to get you past the parts of the scientific workflow that are painful and that you shouldn't be spending your time worrying too much about, in my perspective. But yeah, I'd say use this, wisely, use it ethically, use it, for, doing good and discovering amazing things and curing diseases. Okay. I think if we use it that way, it'll balance out with, obviously the potential misuse of technologies like this. So this will be recorded. We will share it. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening this far. We really enjoyed bringing this content to you. And if you are interested, would love to have you in our intensive course if that timing works out for you. It would be a lot of fun to get to share even more of what we know. All right, I'm going to end it here and wish you all a great day.